Okay, and tonight we are welcoming our special guest, Michelle Gibson. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull up your bio here, Michelle. Michelle Gibson was born in July of 1963 and raised outside of Washington, D.C. in Montgomery County, Maryland. She received her bachelor's degree in social work and psychology from the University of Maryland in Baltimore County in 1989. She has lived in many different places and has traveled extensively. She firmly believes there would be no mysteries in history if we had been told the true history. She has been fascinated by the megaliths most of her life, and her journey has led her to uncovering the key to the truth. She found a star tetrahedron on the North American continent by connecting the dots of major cities and extended the lines outwards. She then wrote down the cities that lined up primarily in circular and linear fashion and got an amazing tour of the world of places she had never heard of, with remarkable similarities across the countries. This whole process and other pieces of the puzzle that fell into place brought up much information, including a suppressed, ancient, advanced global civilization that needs to be brought back into the collective awareness. And her research and tracking these alignments had led her to uncover the evidence for what has taken place here, those who were responsible, and how it was covered up right in front of our eyes. Based on her in-depth research of cities and places in alignment around the world, she found extensive evidence that a worldwide Moorish civilization with its roots in ancient Mu and Atlantis built the world's infrastructure. With different empires within empires, Washita, Phoenician, Tartarian, Barbarian, and Ottoman, to name just a few, but one beautiful, elegant, integrated, unified, and worldwide civilization that was deliberately removed from our collective memory for the purposes of the power and control of the few who definitely do not have our best interests at heart. And with that being said, welcome Michelle Gibson to this version of Connecting Consciousness as our guest. And please, if you would just take it away and start telling us how you came about this research and how you got this started in your life.
Be happy to do that. And thank you so much for the invitation, Ellen. I was explaining to the folks at the beginning that I am also a member of Connecting Consciousness. I joined at the beginning of the year, and I've been following Simon Parks off and on probably for about 5 or 6 years, and became very interested at the beginning of the year in staying connected. And I would call myself completely awake since 2012. By 2012, I was awake to unity consciousness and oneness and, bigger things than we know of in our physical incarnations here on Earth. And then between 2012 and 2016, I learned how dark the dark was. And I got my own piece of the puzzle that I think I've been receiving since I was a child. And really believe I was born to bring this information forward. I am not a trained historian, even though I've always had an interest in history, my favorite subject in school. If I could have figured out a way to get a degree in history or archaeology and get to work quickly, that's probably the route that I would have gone. And I'm glad that I didn't, because then I would have been trained in our, classical history courses and things like that, what we're told about things. So I don't think I would have been open to receive the information. I graduated from high school in 1981. Like Ellen said, I was born in 63. I was born right before Kennedy was assassinated. And I joined the Army in 82 to get money for college. I had a year of junior college and couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And so I joined the Army for the Veterans Educational Assistance Program. And I was in for 4 years. And that basically kind of set the course of my life in doing things differently from most people. Horrified my parents. I think they've gotten it over it to this day. It's like, oh, it's your mom's fault you went into the Army, or your dad's fault. And it's like, hey, I paid my way through college. It was my choice. Don't blame each other. But that kind of set my course in a different direction from most people. And I did have different duty stations in the Army, but I've also lived in a number of different places as an adult. And after I got out of the Army, I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I got my degree in social work and psychology. And I worked as a professional geriatric social worker in activities for about 13 years. And so when people call me a historian, I'm like, well, I'm not really a historian. I don't have any credentials, but I do resonate with the title historical detective, which others have called me, and that's something that I think fits more with what I'm doing. That, and having been very, very well prepared over the course of my life to receive this information, and moving around helped me, I think, break free of what you might call, the conditioning that most people have. And I have deep connections to Georgia. I have my grandfather was a dean of Mercer College in Mercer University in Atlanta before he retired, which is probably about the time I was born. And I have cousins, aunts, uncles that live in Stone Mountain, Lilburn, is it Watsonville? So anyway, Loganville, that area. So I've been going to Georgia my whole life to visit family. My parents were both teachers, and my grandfather, when they graduated, after they got married, after they had their, they're going to be teachers, got them positions in Maryland, and that's where I grew up. And so I have cousins there that have never really traveled very far. I have cousins that live in the same house that my grandparents lived in. And I said, I've ended up moving for one reason or another, I think every 4, 5, 6 years. And in retrospect, it's brought me to where I am today. It helped to wake me up. It gave me the experiences I needed, the people that I've met along the way. It's all contributed to this. And I haven't worked as a professional social worker since after my husband died, shortly after he died in 83 was when he died in 81. No, I'm sorry. He died in 2001. And I got out of social work altogether by the end of 2003. And I've done other things since that time. But I found out a couple of years ago that his health problems and death were service connected. And so I have a VA pension now, and that allows me to focus more time on doing this. And the more I research, the deeper it gets. In some ways, the crazier it gets. But I have the skills and abilities I need to communicate this. And I've been started with a blog. I started turning my blog posts into videos. I've been on YouTube since June of 2018, since I started blogging. And I have more of a reach on YouTube than I do anywhere. And I have to say that speaking is not my very first love. I'm totally in my comfort zone as a writer, but I realized when I got this information that I needed to use whatever venue became available. And so the speaking's gotten easier. I've been doing this for a while, so it's not as intimidating as it used to be.
Yeah.
but
Okay.
but so it kind of starts. I love shows like In Search Of. Leonard Nimoy was looking at mysteries, and Robert Stack was looking at mysteries, and Arthur C. Clarke was looking at mysteries. Shows in the 80s, 70s, 80s. And I couldn't get enough of that kind of information. But of course, back in those days, there just really wasn't that much information available. And it really wasn't until the internet came along that these new streams of information opened up, and anybody that wanted to could post something on the internet, photos or whatever. And thank goodness. I have done some of my own field research, but I'm going places I've never even heard of in my research, have a hard time pronouncing. And, I've got pictures I can show, the same building in China that's in Kansas.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, no, I've seen a lot of this evidence that you're talking about, and not just your work, but like I said, there's more and more people that are doing this work, and they're really questioning the narrative now and the timelines that are sort of dissolved at some point. So yeah, go ahead and tell.
There's an underlying belief that our timeline, the civilization that was here was highly advanced. It was integrated. I believe evil forces figured out a way to hijack the timeline and restart civilization and change the narrative. And that's what we've been taught. We've been, cradled to grave. I don't know how many people know that the Rockefellers were heavily involved in our educational system.
Yes, yeah, I know about this, the Rothschilds regime, the Rockefellers, the Wahlbergs. I know about the university system, but our members need to know about these things as well.
So I found out about it from Foster Gamble, and he has a video called Thrive, which is also the name of his website. And I followed a lot of people before I started doing my own research. That's where I first came across Simon Parks. Can't remember the name of the interviewer. I know she had long red hair, and I can't think of her name. This would have been 4 or 5 years ago. So I think that was the first time I heard about Simon and his story. And, again, was really waking up to higher consciousness and ascension and, all of us coming together as one being. And I was ready. I'm still ready.
Yeah.
But there's this issue of what's taken place here. And my research is not about proving whether or not the Earth is a planet or a plane. I followed alignments, cities and places in alignments to come to the level of understanding that I have come to. I have a lot of people who, ascribe to flat Earth and are very adamant about it, even though, I mean, all I have to say is the word planet and boom, the Earth's flat. If I'm pressed on it.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you? Let me see. Looks like the internet connection dropped her.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yeah, we got you.
Okay, great. So anyway, we've got our energy field as a torus, and we've got the prana tube going down through us, and we're cycling energy up and down, and that's our connection to all there is. And I think the Earth is the same way. I think it's got the energy field around it, and we're a hologram of the Earth as well as the universe. And that's why we're such a big prize. We don't know our power.
Mhm.
And the controllers have managed to remove awareness of that. And because they know, number one, everything they've done is illegal by universal law. They can't do what they've done. They did an end run around the informed consent part by showing us in movies what they were doing, but not telling us, and in books and in songs. And I look at Paradise Lost, John Milton's epic poem, Paradise Lost, as the original predictive programming with what they were, them telling us what they were doing. And also by lying to us and gaslighting us. And, we've got front row seats to all of that playing out. And because of our connectivity and the internet, they don't control the narrative anymore. And the truth is working its way out to the surface. And what's really shocking is because of the extent to which we've been lied to, every bridge has a story, every building has a story, every railroad and canal has a story attributed to it. Maybe a engraved date on an archway or a cornerstone of an old courthouse. you can see this in the older buildings in your community. You just have to go outside your front door, you know, depending on where you live. In some places, maybe it's a newer town and all of the older infrastructure's been destroyed, but in a lot of cases it's still standing, and it's a museum, it's a courthouse, it's a theater, it's a high school. And I'm going to give an example of what I'm talking about in just a moment, but that's how they've managed to hide it. They've given us a new historical narrative, and I think the timeline that we're on isn't even 200 years old.
Mhm.
And a lot of what we've been taught about our history is just plain either to get our consent, like wars, by giving us enemies and telling us we need to do this. But what it's actually been doing is destroying this original infrastructure and pitting us against each other. And that kind of gets into what you were talking about, Ellen. These are beings that thrive on pain and suffering and negativity, but they can't touch us. So they manipulate us to get us to do it to ourselves. And it's been very effective, too effective. And that's another reason it's so important to get this out. Human beings left alone are loving beings.
Yes.
Loving beings. We're not murderous thugs.
Exactly.
By nature. We have to be very damaged to get to that point. And these beings that can't touch us any other way are psychological masters,
Mhm.
master manipulators.
Yeah. I'd have to say
And
that, yeah, not to interrupt you, but they use the MK Ultra mind control techniques that have been around for a very long time. Jay, can you mute your microphone, please? You just came in.
so that's what's going on. That's what we're seeing playing out. And our legacy has been stolen. Our humanity has been degraded. They want to turn us into them. And so there's a lot of agendas that we see right now with transhumanism, transgenderism, the whole 9 yards. It's not about what we're told it's about at all. And so thankfully we're living in a time of a lot of people have awakened to soul missions, a lot of star seeds. And I guess I would put myself into that category because it's amazing that I awoke at all. Had I made any decision along the way, I grew up in a middle class Southern Baptist family, none of this. And they're still not there. And so I just chose a different life. And that's how I got this information. So before I show you some pictures to really kind of underscore what I'm talking about, I just want to share a little bit about how I got to where I am. And the only reason I started making videos and blogging is because it's like, okay, I've got to get this out. I've got to show people what I'm seeing. And I have to do it as soon as I can. This isn't a hobby. This isn't, oh, maybe someday I'll do this. It's like, I've got to do it now and I can't do it fast enough. And I've been blogging and making videos for over 3 years now. I literally cannot get this information out fast enough. But when I was living in Oklahoma, I was living in Fairbanks, Alaska. And I've actually lived in Fairbanks longer than I have anywhere as an adult, 5 years from 94 to 99, and then from 2006 to 2012. And 2006 was when I really started to wake up. But I had my preparation before then. So I moved to Oklahoma City. My brother is a professor at Oklahoma Baptist University, and he and my sister-in-law invited my mom to come live with them because they knew she was really needing somebody there. She's a difficult person for both of us, but I made the right decision. And I moved down there to help them because I knew it was going to be rough. And I joined Unity Spiritual Life Center when I first got there and met some like-minded friends and was happy as a clam. And before I got there, I was already looking at sacred sites I could go to in Oklahoma. So I was already kind of looking for things. And I went traveling with some friends of mine and went to places, Wilhelmina State Park, Queen Wilhelmina State Park in Arkansas was one of the places, Heavener Runestone Park. These were all places that had connections to the ancient world. I learned a lot from James Tiburon of Earthkeeper. If any of you are familiar with him. And he talks about the 12 Atlantean master crystals. 3 of them are in Arkansas, according to his channelings. One's in Mina at Queen Wilhelmina State Park, another's at Eureka Springs, and another's at Mount Magazine.
Yeah, are those crystals, are they physical or are they just energetic?
His channeling from Metatron says that they're way underneath.
Mhm.
And I'll show you a picture of what I took there. There's a green tint to that picture. And several pictures that I took at that location. And emerald, it was the emerald crystal of healing is the one that's supposed to be there.
Okay.
So nothing wrong with the camera. That's all I have to say. And the tint didn't come from me. I don't know enough about that kind of stuff. But anyway, traveling with my friends, one of them was impulse to give me a map. And she said, "You need this." And at the time I'm like, whatever. And I had it sitting on my dining room table. And it must have been there a couple of months. And I'm, looking at it when I'm eating. I've always loved to travel. And I'm starting to notice cities and places lining up in lines. And I don't know how well that comes through, but it's the same shape as a Star of David. Also the human Merkaba, or light body, in 2-dimensional form. It's not 3-dimensional in this. And I found it by connecting cities that were lining up in lines in North America. Now, I had learned about sacred geometry from a Flower of Life workshop around 2007, 2008, when I was living in Fairbanks. So I learned about sacred geometry. And by that time, there were programs that were coming on the internet that researchers, earth energy, dowsers, there are a lot of people that were starting to look at, places around the world that had, like Turkey and South America has a lot of the same stonework, and the chulpas in Peru near Lake Titicaca have little animals that look like they're coming out of the stonework, and you see the same thing at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. So just like, how did this happen? And then the other thing that kind of planted a seed in my mind was John Villa Melchizedek talked about a physical earth grid in his 2010 video called Birth of a New Humanity. And I watched that when it first came out, because that time I was looking for everything he did as soon as it came out. And he was a teacher for a long time, and he's kind of fallen off the radar, but he's still around. I live in Sedona, and I think he lives here somewhere. I don't know where, but he kind of left the public scene a couple of years ago. And I think there were some personal reasons for that. I think some things happened. But he brought back the knowledge of sacred geometry and a lot of this hidden information back to us. And he taught about how to activate the Merkaba in a couple of different ways. And, again, before him, this stuff was pretty much gone. That's my understanding. So if that's not true, I'm not saying anything
No,
deliberately.
I'm familiar with his work as well. I have some of his books. That's Drunvalo Melchizedek, and I watched some of his videos as well.
He started teaching around 1972 is when he came in as a walk-in. He says from Melchizedek consciousness.
Mhm.
And he walked into somebody here and started his work. So I had that information in my head, and I do believe that what I found was the physical layout of this planetary grid. And I think this in North America is the key of the grid. And by key, I mean terminus. I think the whole grid system emanates from the top of it is Edmonton in Alberta. The bottom of it is Merida in Mexico. And North America is a very special place. And I'll get into that.
Yeah, no, I've heard about a lot of the, obviously we have history of giants here, and on the show America Unearthed, they talked about the Mayan ruins that are here in Georgia. So
Yeah, and I saw that episode. That was before I started doing my own research, and those are in Etowah in northeastern Georgia. And they were the Mayan, the blue color. I think he was talking about that. This was a worldwide civilization, so it was all part of the same civilization. And there's mounds everywhere. A lot of them aren't in parks or called mounds. There's mounds everywhere. And there's also Etowahs in a lot of different places. I was living in Oklahoma. There was an Etowah road or drive. So there's clues hidden in place names, lots of clues. And the memory of the people are in the place names. So there's just a lot of the history and the story about these people missing. And we just think, well, that was named after, Palestine in Illinois was named after Palestine in the Middle East. Well, let me tell you something. It's not far out in my mind that Palestine was here too. Same thing with Canaan, and it's just, I haven't gone way far into that, but it's there. Canada, Canaan land, it's there. And so what I did, because by this time I found this in 2016, and I'd been watching enough of these television or programs with, I'll answer the question here in just a moment. With the earth energy dowsers and so forth, I already knew that there were places in alignment and that the ancients were very precise. I already had that background. So when I found that, and that's my original discovery, what I did was, my map unfortunately is like totally fallen apart. But when it was new, I took those lines from the star tetrahedron, which is the name of the sacred geometric shape, and I extended them out. And I started looking at all these places that were lining up, and I was seeing pyramids, and I was seeing all kinds of stuff, like pyramid in Greenland. In Bolivia, there's the Potosi silver mine, and it's like a pyramid sitting on top of this mine. And so I'm seeing these pictures come up, and I needed a way to get to the other side so I could see where these places were leading to. And that was when my globe came in, because I superimposed the star tetrahedron, and I was able to follow the lines around. And it's way too much information to try to get it all, but I've got about
Uh-oh, did we lose you again? Can you hear us? I think your video stopped again.
hear me?
There you are.
Okay. So anyway, I wrote down these some places that were lining up in alignment with each other, and some of them are in lines and some of them are in circles. The work that I've done. I eyeballed it. I thought about getting a software program, and I thought I could spend a lot of money on it and not figure out how to use it. That was entirely possible. So I just took a magnifying glass and I wrote down these places that were lining up. And I do think I had help from the other side on this. I can remember a couple times saying a little prayer. Okay, show me where to go. And then I started looking at photos of these places, drone videos, and everything had the same signature, same handed design all over the world. It's beautiful. Everything of beauty in this world was created by this civilization. And when the controllers came in, they were immediately looking to monetize all the resources. You know, lumber mills came in, livestock yards and charnel houses came in, mining came in big time. They were, you know, just getting as many of these resources as they possibly can and selling it instead of taking care of it, which is something the original civilization would have done. They lived in balance and harmony and with nature, with each other, you know, balance between masculine and feminine. And not only that, it was matriarchal. So the leaders were women. And it was a very, very different society and civilization than anything we've ever been told. I call it the John Wayne version of history, is what we've been taught. As opposed to this incredible civilization where every piece of infrastructure was precisely placed and it was all part of this free energy grid system. And cathedral rose windows are solfeggio frequencies. Organs are right underneath these windows. That if you look at a cymatic pattern, it's a solfeggio frequency note. And these buildings were lined up with each other, and these windows had something to do with frequency, positive frequencies, sending positive frequencies out. And you have tall bell towers. You have a lot in Florida. You have a lot on college campuses. You probably have a lot in Georgia, South Carolina. Walk Tower in Florida, Citrus Tower, Furman University has a tower. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Just tall towers. And I think that was sending frequencies out. Duke University is another one, Duke Chapel, out into the universe, balancing, healing frequencies. And all of the stories about how we are told about how that happened, Kim, I would say yes, they were master builders. But they were human, and they were here for a very, very long time. Very long time. I think they go back to ancient Lemuria, and they are the same as the Atlanteans, and they had this beautiful civilization up until recently. And then whenever the dark beings, controllers, whatever, cabal, whatever you want to call them, did what they did, they just destroyed that civilization, and then they took it all over, and we're living out that right now. But I'm gonna try to bring this a little bit more home, but I'm going to answer an earlier question about Arkansas. The parks are Mount Magazine State Park. There's also Eureka Springs. And if you go to where the Passion Play is and go down, there's Magnetic Springs. And that's where Tiburon says you can go. I was there a couple of years ago when I lived in Oklahoma City. I guess you could say I made a pilgrimage to all of these sites. And then Queen Wilhelmina State Park, which is outside of Mena, Arkansas, in the southwest corner near Huebner, Oklahoma, in the Winding Stair Mountains, which is where the John Wayne film True Grit was filmed. And he, by the way, was a Mason. He was a Shriner. And that's kind of where you're getting into who's behind some of this. There's other complicits, but the Shriners were a big part of that. Or I would say the upper echelon of Freemasonry was infiltrated. But I really want to show something to make a big, huge point, and the extent to how this just has been hidden right in front of us. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And I just want to show you, this is one of the most recent ones I did. And I'm researching things that people in my community, commenters, have left me. hey, look at this, hey, look at that. And I've done this before, but recently I started a series on it where I'm focusing on it entirely. Central High School in Duluth, Minnesota. How many people went to school in a building that looks over the top for a high school?
It's unbelievable, really. I mean, that's just way over the top.
And there are government buildings that look just like it. You know, I was just looking at some places in Toronto, and that's in my next one. And, you know, the Toronto Old City Hall has a big clock tower like that. And, you know, and then they had to build a new city hall. They tell us in the process of doing that, they knocked down a building that looks like it's from ancient Rome. They tear them down. Most of these beautiful buildings, and now this one is still standing. It's an administrative building now. So the school district uses it. We're told that was built as a high school. It was built as a high school. And not only that, they installed bells
Yeah.
in the bell tower of this high school.
No, we never see
And
that.
of course, the bells have graffiti on them. What else do high school students do? And then you look out the window in this top picture and it looks kind of different from what it looks like now. What happened?
Yeah.
You know, but I know a lot of high schools and junior high schools and even some elementary schools are over the top, look like castles.
Mhm.
A lot of those buildings are gone and they've been replaced by a new building. But they started out like that in all kinds of places. And I think this is part of the agenda of the controllers, because this grid system was originally for positive and for good and life enhancement. So these were part of the grid system. And they've reverse engineered schools and banks and theaters and museums into control mechanisms. And they want to control us. So they can't build like this, but they can reverse engineer and they can get into our heads and cast spells and do the things that they do. And it's hard to go there because it's hard to believe, but
Hey,
they do that.
You're talking to somebody who's done my own research, and I keep trying to at least educate anyone that might listen that we're dealing with black magicians, and all of the dark arts are being played out. That's why Harry Potter's so popular. You know, I mean, seriously.
And a good book to reference for that is the Book of Enoch,
Mhm.
which
Yep.
was removed from the Western canon of the Bible. And when I say as Canon, and it was retrieved from Ethiopia, where it was still part of their Bible, and brought back to the West. And the Book of Enoch talks about the fallen angels binding each other with spells and coming down here, and talks about the watchers and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not an expert on it, but unfortunately, we're dealing with non-physical entities with no love for humanity. And up until not too long ago, they did a real number on us and came incredibly close to getting away with what they've done.
Mhm.
Now we're not out of the woods yet, but I'm thinking we're heading in that direction. But we've got to see it all play out, because they got into everything.
Yeah.
They got into everything. And so now is the time for waking people up to say, hey,
Yeah.
look around you. That's why I say just go outside your front door. And I'm just going to point out a couple of things here. And then this is an interesting story. The same high school was said to have a cannon on the front steps. Now, there's a lot of researchers that think these weren't actually military in use, that they had something to do with the grid. I don't know how it fits in, but this is what they say. It was a 17-foot, 6-ton cannon on the steps of the high school from 1898 to 1942. That's how long it was there. That was captured from a Spanish warship during the Spanish-American War and requested by the Duluth City Council for Duluth. And they had to pay the transportation costs to get it there. And then the cannon was either sold or donated as scrap iron and melted down and used during World War II. Now,
It's just it's so bizarre.
what? But that's the kind of story that's out there. And this is just from Wikipedia or whatever I was looking at. Now, I wouldn't call Wikipedia as the most reliable source of information, but it does give places to look. It does tell the story that they want us to believe. The reason there's a cannon on the steps, whether it was, for defense or whether it was serving some other kind of purpose. And I do think that these wars were part and parcel of destroying this civilization's infrastructure. And I've just come across so many examples from the Civil War, World War I and World War II, Vietnam, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, that they're just out to destroy life. I mean, are we dealing with anti-life? Because
I think so.
the things they do, it's like corporations. Let's look at corporations.
So it's ironic because they don't have what humans have, that, God within, they get it synthetically. And they hate humans. They have a beef against the creator. So they're trying to get at creation through us. And they've removed our connection with all that is from our awareness. And so the irony is that the end result of what they want destroys all life, which they need to live. And so that's why they're trying to figure out a way to make us into machines, which is what transhumanism is about. I think that's what that's about. Is they have to make us live forever inside a machine to get what they need to live. Now, that I don't know a lot about transhumanism, but I know we don't want it. But that's the direction that they've been herding us, if you will, programming us into.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I've looked at this too, and I've listened to other people, very well educated people. They say pretty much the same thing, and is it AI, or are we dealing with beings, from another existence?
I think that there is some connection to artificial intelligence. I really don't know how that all plays together. I'm just trying to, to show how advanced we were, the beautiful infrastructure and architecture that exists all over the earth, and danger. And they can't lay a hand on us themselves. And we have to give our consent to what they're doing. This is a free will universe. They have gotten our consent by lying to us and making us afraid and giving our freedoms out of fear. And this has been going on for a long time. They create the problem, the Hegelian dialectic. They create the problem, solution, reaction. Bomb goes up.
Yeah.
Right, bomb goes off, takes down the World Trade Center or whatever. We've got to bring in all of these things to protect you. And it ends up giving them more control. And that's their template. Create the problem and then present the solution. Playing out to this day. So I just wanted to show you something. I got a I'm following these suggestions that people have made from the videos that I've done. And it's taking me to places I wouldn't have looked otherwise. I got a lot of data from my data points here, and that's kind of what gave me the bigger picture and what to look for, because I saw the same infrastructure all over the earth, and I saw how the controllers came in and took over everything, which is how I got the big picture information from that. I distilled it and could see what was going on. But this is the Keweenaw Peninsula, and it's okay. So here's Michigan, and it's this little thumb up here, I guess, is where we're talking about. And it was known for copper. And on the other side of Lake Superior in Minnesota is the Iron Ranges. So you've got mega iron mines over here on this side. You've got copper on this side. I personally think that the original civilization had something to do with it being there to begin with. But I've gone through examples of that, but I don't really want to go into that right at this moment, because the point that I want to make with this, okay, so there's all this pure copper up there. You've got Isle Royale, which was known in ancient times as a mine. And this showed up on my original alignment that I showed you between Edmonton and Ottawa. It went right through it. Big piece of iron that they say is float iron. So this is stuff that was floating from glaciers. That's their standard explanations, glaciers. And there's infrastructure like this here, which is, it's a lift bridge. So it goes up, and there's other examples of lift bridges around the Great Lakes and other places as well across the Mississippi, in Iowa, Dubuque, Iowa. I don't know how many people know that US 41 starts in Miami, you know, the one that goes right through Macon and Atlanta. It goes all the way up to this little tippy top of Michigan here, Keweenaw Peninsula. If I lived there, I think I'd take a road trip. I didn't know that. Now 75, Interstate 75 ends up here in Michigan in Sault Ste. Marie. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And then on the Keweenaw Peninsula, you have this waterway, and it was widened. But before it was widened, it looked like this. So it looked like a canal, and there's a railroad track going by it. Because of the research that I've done, I'd seen the same thing in Pennsylvania. So this is the Lehigh Canal, and you've got the railroad tracks right next to it. And then Point of Rocks in Maryland. I've probably actually walked through this tunnel when I was in Baptist youth programs. The Appalachian Trails around here somewhere. But you've got this beautiful configuration of the canal and the railroad right beside it. And we're supposed to be building this in the 1850s. This is before, that would be before the Civil War. So what do we think of with the Civil War? I think of the scene in Dances with Wolves at the very beginning when Kevin Costner's riding on his horse, you know, his legs about ready to be cut off, and they're, you know, bringing out the chloroform and they're going to saw his leg off, and he's like, heck no, and he's out of there. But that's what I think of when I think of what things were like during the Civil War. I'm not thinking of massive engineering projects like this. It's not what comes to mind. It's not what our narrative tells us we were capable of doing. The narrative does not match what's actually there. So this is Point of Rocks in Maryland. And I want to say they started it before 1850. And the narrative says, okay, the canal and the railroad were started on the same day, the C&O and the B&O. And they were kind of racing each other to get it done. And then there was legal battles through this stretch. And the canal won, but they had to allow the B&O canal to build. And then within a few years, the C&O canal was obsolete because the railroad was so much more efficient. So by the 1850s, 1860s, the canal wasn't even used for transportation anymore. That's what they tell us. That's what they want us to believe. And we accept it, because why would they lie to us? And you get the story told in history classes, you get it in museums. Everything is reinforcing this narrative. And, you know, there's more examples in this, but I just wanted to share this because this is one. And then the other thing that doesn't make sense, oh, and this is some architecture, the courthouse in Houghton, Houghton in, it's the Houghton County on the Keweenaw Peninsula. And so what we're told in the official narrative is it was built starting in 1886, July of 1886, the cornerstone was laid. Look it up. And then a little over a year later, it's built. It was dedicated on July 28th of 1887. And again, when I talk about courthouses, this is an example. And not only that, but the winters are harsh up there. So they want us to believe that this building was built in a year with a Michigan winter in the between time. Every building has a story to explain how it got there.
Yeah, do you have some of the images? I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have some of the images? Oh, no, I guess you're getting to that where it's actually the windows at the ground level, because this is something that even our members can just.
You see it here. You see it right here. You see windows at ground level all over the place. Well, they must have meant it to be that way. Surely. Why? And then it's not level. And that gets into the idea that in order to hijack the timeline, the controllers created a cataclysm, which is what I believe. Some people believe it was space weather and, you know, solar minimum and Carrington event. Carrington event might have been part of it, but I think this was deliberately caused, or we would have had an extinction level event and we wouldn't be here today. Because the group that we know of is the Illuminati, the 13 bloodlines, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, DuPonts, the Onassis. Anyway, there's a bunch of them. Came in, rebuilt, had everything rebuilt, and then took over everything. That's how they got so wealthy. Then they make beer, and distilleries, alcohol distilleries are like some of the first things that came up. So they're lowering our consciousness with alcohol. We're paying for it.
Yeah.
We're paying for the movies that we go see and get mind controlled with. We're paying for the drugs the big pharma gives us to make us better, supposedly. You know, natural medicine is suppressed. Natural medicine doctors are killed. You know, I know there was a period of a couple of years within the last few years that there was a high number of natural medicine doctors that were killed or suicided.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I've seen that. All of the homeopathic and naturopaths have been killed off for the past 10 years.
So there's something that doesn't want that information or that kind of practice out there. And it's to keep us dependent on allopathic medicine and, you know, which anyways, I won't go too much into that. But again, this is up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, or it's part of the Upper Peninsula, but it's called the Keweenaw Peninsula. So it's a little separate from the main part of the state. You know, we think horse and buggy, you know, automobiles don't put along until like the 1900s, sometime in there. And, you know, the roads aren't supposed to be that great, right? This is a narrative, but they're building like that.
Yeah, this just doesn't match the narrative at all. I mean, it's just so ornate and over the top and with beautiful, it's beautiful though.
Right.
And
so
all
this
of
was
that
said to have been built between 1901 and 1912. And there's this Catholic priest that was supposed to have been behind the building of it. And you see something as beautiful as you'll see in Rome or anywhere in Europe. The thing is, it's all over the North America too, but we just don't recognize it because we're told it was built recently,
Yeah,
relatively recently,
and
as opposed to centuries ago.
and all of that's like for sound frequencies. You can see the acoustical abilities right there with the high ceilings and everything.
So I think I'm going to get to a map here. Okay. So not only that, there was a trolley line here. Oh, hang on. Hang on. The AI, there we go. Okay. So there used to be a trolley line here. There used to be a trolley line everywhere. If you search for historic trolley lines, and you can pick anywhere, they started out as being horse-drawn, and then somewhere 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, they started to be electrified. And then they were all gone between like the 1930s and the 1950s. They were replaced by cars and buses. Free energy, trolleys that went everywhere, low polluting, affordable, replaced by cars, buses, trucks that you had to buy insurance for, that you had to buy gas for. And you look at Rockefeller's company like Standard Oil and how rich he was. So they had to replace this form of transportation as quickly as possible with gasoline powered vehicles, which creates a whole host of other problems. You have to have money to buy gas. If you're in an accident, you could get killed. You could kill somebody else. You could end up paying a lot of money if you don't have insurance, or you end up paying out a lot of money in insurance. Big business. These were everywhere. And trains were also. So again, you have, we're talking up in northern Michigan, for all intents and purposes, on the Great Lakes. And if you've ever heard of the lake effect with winters and the snow, they have these railroad tracks, they have mines, and they even have trolley parks, which were early amusement parks. And the one here, the dance hall, said to have been in operation between 1902 and 1932. And then in 1932, all operations of the Houghton Traction Company ended, which was the streetcar company. The park disappeared completely by World War II because of the cost of maintenance. And the main pavilion was sold and scrapped and reassembled as a potato barn. So these electric parks, trolley parks, they were at the ends of trolley lines, amusement parks. A lot of them burned. I don't know how many people in the audience remember a trolley park or amusement park, and there's very few of the original ones that are still in operation. There's a hand, maybe 10 to 12. And then there's other parks at the places where these were. So I think these were like nodal points of some kind, high electricity, high power places. And that these rail systems were all part of the original grid system and the generation of this free energy. And again, I'm not just saying that, I've been studying this for quite some time. And again, the narrative just does not match, among other things, the narrative does not match what they tell us. And I got to thinking, I'm of the Captain Kangaroo generation, born in 63. I remember Captain Kangaroo writing the year 1969 on his blackboard, and memories of that. So I wasn't really a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood generation, but my brothers were. And so you have Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood of Make Believe with the trolley and the castle. And up here you have kind of what looks like a little Parthenon kind of building, and you have like a little Eiffel Tower building. And I really think this is predictive programming, and we're being told about the original civilization, and it's not make-believe. Again, we haven't been told this. It sounds wild out there, but I can't tell you how many castles there are in North America. Too many to count. And, you know, I just showed you that school. Kind of looks like a castle. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm just going to scoot down, especially in your part of the world. There's a lot of man-made lakes, Lake Lanier, South Carolina, Georgia, and there's cities underneath. They flooded out something when they covered it up, and I think when they made the lake, and I think that's another way they hid this, was just by covering it up with water. I really go into a lot of detail.
Yeah.
My website is called piercingtheveilofillusion.com.
Okay.
There's a lot of places where there used to be a railroad. There are railroad avenues now. You know, old railroad stations are turned into office space. This is the doctor's office now. I'm speculating that there's a connection between waterfalls and all of this, and I still believe that, but I talk about it more in depth as to how that could possibly even be. And let's see. So a lot of missing rails that used to be. Mason City in Iowa is one place that still has a traction railroad company. So like I said, the Houghton back up on Keweenaw Peninsula had the Houghton Traction Company. You have one that's a short line rail line, so it's about 10 miles long, between Mason City and Clear Lake in Iowa. And it is still that electrified rail. So that's still in operation, and I think they were all like that. They leave some of it. You've got in downtown Mason City, you've got the streetcar. I don't have that anymore. And that story is repeated over and over. They took out the streetcars, took out the tracks in many cases. In some places, they were able to like put them back in. I mean, Atlanta probably has something, but you know, again, this was everywhere, not just a few miles. It was everywhere. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, one of the things that I just want our members, you know, go out in your own town. You can see the evidence of the mud flood just by observing some of the buildings. When those windows are at ground level, it just means that the rest of the building was buried beneath the mud.
So this was Dubuque, Iowa. It had a streetcar system, and it's one of the few places left that still has an incline railway. And if you've been to the one at Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, it's the same idea. These used to be in a lot of different places too. Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania still has 2 operating, but they used to have a lot more. Cincinnati used to have them. They don't have any anymore. Dubuque had one. I mean, not Dubuque, Duluth, Minnesota had one. They don't have it anymore. They had a streetcar system they don't have anymore. We were already that advanced. We had it. Why did they take it out? And, you know, the answer is they didn't want it. They didn't want us to have that.
Yeah, it's just all about control. You know, how much more can we be reliant on their system of control is all it boils down to.
So this is just a graphic showing the railroads that were supposed to have been built by 1870. So keeping in mind, by our timeline, that would have been 5 years after the end of the Civil War. That was our railroad network. And that by 1890, it had already grown that much. And I don't think they were being built. I think they were being dug out and brought back into operation. This was in Japan, in Tokyo. It was a part of an amusement park called Luna Park. Luna parks were worldwide. And I talk about that in and next one. These are my most recent ones. And people are great. They leave me more information. So they get my short and sweets are getting longer and longer, but can't be helped. Kansas City is known as the city of fountains. Supposedly more than Rome.
Which is amazing. We do have a question in the chat for you.
Sure.
What was the time frame of this last mud flood that we had? What have you found?
I think it was okay. I had a theory about it and I've adjusted a little bit. I think there was a 3D time loop created between 1492, which was the year of the fall of the Moors in Spain, and 1942, which was midway through World War II. And when I first started looking for information, it was the year of the Philadelphia experiment. Now, when you look it up, it tends to be 1943. But when I was first looking for it, I found 1942. And Dronvilo McKelzdek was the first person I ever heard talking about the Philadelphia experiment. And he talked about how, the men on the ship, when the ship came back from invisibility, they were embedded in the ship. And he said their Merkabas were all, messed up. And there were a couple of things that pointed me in the direction of it. So part of my theory is that this Philadelphia experiment had something to do with the creation of the time loop. Now, the way I believe that for a number of reasons, and one is the way this has unfolded for me. And I have, since I live in Sedona, I don't consider myself clairvoyant or clairaudient. I do consider myself clairsentient, and just knowing a lot of stuff, intuitive. But I do have a lot of friends that could be called trance channels or partial chance channels, or, they have spirit jumping in and out. It's like, oh. So I had a friend stop by to see me, and she knocked on my door, and she actually came to see my roommate at the time, who was a reader. But she knocked on my door and she said, "Oh, I see your guides." After I opened it, she said, "They want me to tell you something. The first is that what you're mulling is correct." And that was the 3D time loop between 1492 and 1942 is 1717 as the midpoint year, because there's 250 years on either side. I knew it had something to do with it, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out the mechanism. And then she said, "And they're showing me Ireland, and it's 1742 or 43, and on one side it's white and on the other side it's green." The only reason in the world I looked up Ireland in 1742 was because of what my friend said. No knowledge of this. And two things came up. And one was that the premiere of Handel's Messiah was in the spring of 1742 in Dublin. The other thing that came up was that there was this Great Frost of Ireland, which took place between 1740 and 1741. And it was like 21 months of extremely cold weather, and hundreds of thousands of people died. They had said there was no known cause of it. They speculated a little bit. And so I have wondered if the Philadelphia experiment was sent back to that time and created a rip in the fabric of space-time. And it was shortly after that that I got put in touch with the mud flood community on YouTube, and I realized we're all looking at the same buildings. Now, there's speculation that it was a frequency weapon. It could have been a directed energy weapon, a nuclear weapon, that caused the liquefaction. And that's what happens, like when there's a really big earthquake, the earth liquefies in places, causes it to turn to mud. Something happened. And what I've kind of refined this idea of this rip in space time, because I think that was when the evil one started to incarnate. I think it allowed them to come in. And so within 3 years of this event, in 1744, Mayor Rothschild was born in Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany. 4 years after he came in, Adam Weishaupt came in, and he was the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati and raised by Jesuits for all intents and purposes. 2 years after Weishaupt, the progenitor of what's the House of Windsor today was born in Germany, in Saxe-Coburg. I think this event allowed these beings to come in. Now, somebody left me a comment recently, and I hadn't really thought about this. I've been saying that they have incarnated in human form, but they don't have human souls. And the comment that was left me, they're not even they're not even like us. You know, they're life forms, but they're, you know, so I don't know. I do know they're not human. And I do know that's when our problems really began. And all of the original ruling houses of Europe were taken down and replaced by this one German line that started with when this man was born in 1850. Duke Francis of Saxe-Coburg and Saalfeld, or Altenburg, one of the two. There's an Altenburg and a Saalfeld. That was the beginning of the British royal family today, the Belgian royal family, anyway, it was Russia, you know, they put themselves all over Europe's royal houses, and they're part of this problem.
Yeah, and it's huge now though, because they've just been perpetuating all of their evil and even using, I don't know if they're humans or walk-ins or what, you know, I know they've been summoning things from dark places with all these sacrifices.
Yeah,
but it's
not in mainstream, but if you look with an open eye and an honest eye, it's in there, it's on the internet, it's real. But it's not pleasant, and it's extremely difficult subject. But there's been a problem with pedophilia in the British upper classes for a long time. You heard about it in the Catholic Church before you heard about it in other places, but it's not just there. It's this problem with pedophilia, and worse, is in the elite, so-called elite class. And huge problem. And so I think it's been dealt with on a number of levels over the last couple of years. And whereas they used to just do their evil deeds with impunity, and I think they aren't able to do that anymore. I think things have been put in place to stop that, but it still happens. But I don't think it's happening with the regularity it was. And I really do believe that people are going to be held accountable for it. And we're just waiting for that to play out. One of the main reasons I joined Connecting Consciousness this year was because I knew Simon is one of the people that seems to get information. But I was aware of Simon long before I joined. So anyway, we're going to make it through this. But part of it is getting some things out that need to come out. And this is a fountain in Kansas City, Missouri. And that tower in the background behind the fountain, I didn't go into it in this because, again, I'm trying to keep them short. But just look at that tower. You see the double windows there?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up the Cathedral of Seville in Spain. And we know that there were Moors in Spain. So it's a good place to go for comparisons. And I just want to show you that this bell tower in Seville, Spain, looks like this bell tower in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
And that when I say that, I'm not just grasping at straws. There was a different advanced civilization here, and it's not what we've been taught.
Yeah. We do have another question for you. Did the mud flood cover the entire earth or just certain parts? that you know of?
I know it covered probably most of North America. I've seen pictures in India. If you Google mud flood, just type in mud flood, you'll get all kinds of images. This is not as hard to find information about. I think it was. Now, maybe to a greater or lesser extent. Japan, I've often wondered if that did not get hit by the mud flood because of the way Japan was opened. It was opened by force in the 1850s. And I want to say it was Commodore Perry. Okay, so he arrives in Tokyo Bay with his ships. And there was a shogun at the time. Okay, I'm not even gonna try. The last one, the last main one. And they had a directive that if the Japanese didn't surrender, they were going to burn it to the ground. And so that was like, I want to say it was in 1853 is when they showed up, the US Navy showed up with orders from President Millard Fillmore. After they left, the shogun died and his son became shogun, but that was the end of the shogunate for all intents and purposes. And then there was a treaty of peace and friendship that was signed with the Japanese emperor like within the next year. And the Americans were demanding that 2 ports be made available to the US ships. And one was Hakodate. And I want to say the other was Shimoda or something like that. So Hakodate has a beautiful star fort for anybody that might be familiar with star forts. And that's kind of a topic, a gateway topic for people because we're told these are military, but they're all over the world. I'm just going to put that there. So to my right here or to my left, you see the star fort. So that was one of the places that the US wanted access to. And I want to say the other was Shimoda. And if you look at Shimoda, it looks like this is Shimoda. It looks kind of like a pyramid back there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and again, when you start looking, there's lots of pyramids around.
Yeah. I saw some down when I went to the Baja Peninsula. A couple of years ago, I did a job down there and there were some mountains that were very suspicious. They look just like that.
And I get that as an example because that might be an example of a place that wasn't mud flooded. So they had to get it another way. They had to force it. So in answer to your question, I think most places were affected by it. And this might be an example of it here. So because I showed the Central High School, somebody said, you need to look at John Hanley High School in West Winchester, Virginia, as an example of ridiculous architecture for a high school. So there's a strange mound in the front and there's a park in the back that reminded him of the mall in Washington, D.C. So this is John Hanley High School. And what does it look like?
Yeah, it's so bizarre. I mean,
You know,
the thing is huge.
And you do have something that looks like, I don't know, like they might be digging something out. But one of my personal favorites is the El Paso High School. This is one of the first ones I encountered that it's like, oh my gosh. You know, again, where it's like This is a high school in El Paso.
Yeah, that's not a high
Hey,
school.
that's a high school. That's
No,
a high school.
Come on. That's ridiculous.
That's a high school.
Yeah, well, they certainly didn't build it, just put it that way. They just sort of moved in. They scooped something out of the ground there.
So that's, I mean, that's the point. And again, we don't think about it. It's not in our heads. We don't question it. I didn't go to high school in a school that looked like that.
No.
Let me see, because it looks different from what I remember when I was looking at it not too long ago. And there are some columns out front that I never really thought about before, but it's still not the old style of architecture. I don't think. I don't know anymore. So again, a lot of the older schools aren't standing anymore. And I'm going to unshare my screen here because I think that's enough information at least to make a point. And I've got tons more about how this has been hidden from us without our awareness, and that we are actually living in the old world, just like what you see in Europe and other parts of the world.
Yeah, and they're just building upon all the history. They've been erasing history for a very long time, as we know.
Mhm.
And even now, they're destroying the statues here in Georgia, of some of the past Civil War statues. Like they're demanding it be taken down. So we don't know our history. We don't know our past.
It's not the first time, but it's how they've done it. It's how they've managed to erase history. And, they get into the public school system and teach kids their version of history or what they want them to know or believe. And it's actually the same thing that happened before, but the roles have been reversed. And they've made it about race and religion, and it's just how they've manipulated us.
Mm-hmm. And we have some questions for you. Lisa Alvarez has a question. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Great information. Have you looked at the map of DC? I used to live there.
Mhm.
And the symbolism in DC is just, it's sickening. For those that are not familiar with it, there's so many demented symbolisms throughout just Washington, DC. It's crazy.
And actually they've been turned into that. It's like a star map, just like other places are a star map. So originally it was about aligning heaven and earth, but the evil ones have just, done very bad things there. And Comet Ping Pong, if anybody's ever heard of that, is not too far from Congress. But that's a great example. And let me just show you something really quick. Because it's a good example of how the narrative doesn't explain how things got there very well at all. And I just have to find this real quick. Please bear with me. Because everything lines up. And I followed a long distance alignment that started in Washington and ended in Washington. And I went right through Atlanta and Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, that's near where the
University of
Guidestone.
Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia Guidestone. They're up that way.
Athens. And really look at the architecture differently. Because it's a really good example, but I just want to show you this real quick because of what lines up. When you start looking at a map of of DC. And you've got the White House here. It goes right smack dab through the middle of the ellipse, which is in the center of DC, right to the Jefferson Memorial. And we're told, I mean, the time that we're told that was built, it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, the Supreme Court was supposed to have been built in the middle of the Depression. And if you look at the Supreme Court building with its giant doors, and we're building that in the middle of the Depression. I mean, come on. Really? The Depression? Look. Built between 1932 and 1935. Depression started in 1929. World War II started in 1939. They think we're stupid.
Well, I mean, we have been just kept back, you know, it's like holding somebody back from their grade levels.
Oh, they'll never look.
Yeah.
And then the doors, I mean, let me see here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So now this is another question though, like how do the giants play into this? Because I hear there were giants that were actually very benign and benevolent. And
I think these human beings were much taller. And I really think we've been engineered to the size that we are on the average today. But if you look at found in North America, the original humans were just big. They were just big. And I think there was a benevolent civilization for thousands and thousands of years. Now, how the Nephilim play into all of that, and how were there alternate timelines, you know, where the, you know, if we're in the fourth world and this was the third world, what about the first and second world? I don't really know. I just know that the civilization I'm seeing is highly integrated all over the world. So my conclusion is that it was positive. But the giant's bones were found in little towns all over. They were part of museums, and they were made to go away. And that's where you get the missing skeletons in the Great Smithsonian cover-up, like you do with this book. Either they ended up in the basement of Smithsonian, or they ended up in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Something happened, but the giant's bones that were, you know, at the post office in, you know, downtown middle of nowhere aren't there anymore.
yeah, another instance of hijacked timeline. And also we have a question.
Let me just finish this real quick, because
Okay, sure.
so you've got, you know, these two things going here, and then you've got the Lincoln Memorial here, and you've got the Capitol here, and you've got the Washington Monument here. So it's in perfect alignment. And yet they want us to believe everything was built haphazardly at different times. We don't get an education on how well planned all of this is. And so I, you know, thank you, because DC is a really, really good example of that. And then you've got, just Wayne Herschel is a South African researcher, and he's done some really great research on these star maps. He's got some books called The Hidden Records, and he's looked at a lot of Masonic stuff. But about the star maps on the Earth, I've seen one where that has a bunch of them. Let's see if I can find it. But Washington, D.C. is one of those. Washington. Rome is one.
Isn't there a way that if you align the different streets the way that they flow through, it also shows those different symbolisms?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is an intentional alignment between heaven and earth. And the cities were very special. They had something to do with electricity. And, and they're destroying the cities now. They're destroying the cities, and it breaks my heart. But again, I really do think the next couple of months could be very, very interesting. But I do think that there are good forces at work to liberate us. And I think we have help from our galactic brothers and sisters, and that things are happening, whether it looks like it or not. That they had planned this for a very, very long time, and they got uncomfortably close to getting away with it. But we all came here to help with this. And, I think the reason it's being allowed to play out the way it is to wake up people that would not have otherwise woken up.
Yes,
And,
I am with you at that.
Very hard to watch. I thought they were all going to be in jail by December.
We've been
Throw away
hearing
the
about
key.
Gitmo a lot.
Hang them, but I think they're being allowed to commit more crimes and wake up the population that's capable of waking up.
Yep, and that's what this whole experience is about. We do have a question earlier from Kim about the cathedrals and the sound. The sound vibration for the windows that represent cymatics. Can you speak more along that? Or is there more information that in regards to that?
For a while, and there are some other researchers on YouTube that are doing some really good work along these lines as well. It's like we're all kind of converging on this. The cathedrals were healing centers, were resonance chambers, that the different features of the cathedral were serving different functions. So, the chapel spires or whatever you want to call them, with their crosses or whatever on top, were drawing down cosmic energy, and that the different shapes of the windows were serving different functions. And so I mentioned the rose windows earlier are like solfeggio frequency shapes. If you look at cymatics, different cathedral windows were like antenna. Organs were doing something, special, but it was about healing. Not only the people that were there, but I think around the world, and I also think in the universe. I think literally Earth was like the kingdom of God. Literally, it was like the perfect place, the Garden of Eden. We were all functioning in harmony, and the dark forces said, we want that. This is how we're going to do this. And we can't solve the problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So as we move into 5D, we have to come from a heart space. And I've processed through a lot of ouch and anger, and I still have to deal with the front row seat that I have in my research. I still have to deal with that, but I know that we've all been lied to. We all have to heal. We've been divided by race and religion. We're all one being, true humans. True humans are. I don't know about people with non-human souls. I haven't figured that one out yet. But true humans are all one, and we have been artificially divided by race and religion. And it needs to stop. We need to have different choices. We need to recognize that we've been lied to, not listen to the programming about white, black, yellow, red, green. It's all been, the only beings that benefit from that narrative are the ones that are feeding on our negative energy.
Exactly. And we have to come into our own awareness of, we can't control everything else, but we can control this vessel. And with that, really focus on being better people towards each other and allowing space for others. They've kept our minds and our spiritual development premature so that we react instead of reflecting, like wise people should,
And I've been following the conscious community for a long time. Man, I was all ready for ascension, and I thought I knew how this was going to happen. And I can honestly say I don't know. But what I can tell you is I've seen how easy it is to divide the conscious community by whispering a rumor or a half truth. And we're facing a highly organized evil force, or they have been. Now, hopefully they're going to turn on each other. But we have been so easily divided, and they know that by judgment, by ego. There was somebody I used to follow in Hawaii, and I can't remember her name. And I don't know how many of you have heard of Corey Good and the work that he does. And I haven't followed Corey's work for a while. I watched Gaia for a number of years, and then I started having streaming problems, and then I heard things about them, so I haven't really followed them. But somebody said that Corey was doing these rituals and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden she's like hands off. She's like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. But I'm giving that as an example in our own community. And again, sometimes it's hard to tell. You don't know.
Yeah, that's why I keep telling people, I'm like, question everybody, question absolutely everybody right now, because we're being deceived at all levels.
Yes. And we haven't turned into a totally coherent force for good yet. We're making progress and inroads, but it's because of that difficulty, and bringing us together and focused on that. And, liberation of all of humanity is a big part of that, but also, getting information like this out there that says, okay, we've been lied to, and this is why I think that.
Yeah. And this is why I wanted to have you here, because we need to reach more people. There's not that many people that I'm aware of in my own circles that know much about your work. And I'm just getting into this whole Tartarian empire myself. So
yeah. Now, Tartaria was one of the empires of this original civilization, but it's the one everybody knows it by because the researchers that first started talking about it were from Russia. So it was like Russia, Tibet, China, Korea, Japan. It was Asia. And so it's better known as Tartaria if you're looking for it. Everything that I've come to understand is that it goes back to Lemuria or Mu, and a very ancient people called Moors, M-U-apostrophe-U-R-S, still with us today. And the Washita Moors are the Aboriginal indigenous inhabitants of North America. And they have an empress to this day. They're ruled by an empress, or their leader, their top dog is a woman. And so this was a matriarchal society. How do I think slavery fits in with the true history? Is that I think we've been given a slave narrative. I think the Moors, melanated people, I understand that melanin is a superconductor, very spiritual people. And that was turned on its head. So the order of society was turned upside down. It was turned, into a black-white thing. And now it's being turned back to a white-black thing. Am I right?
Yeah.
We're going back in the opposite direction. It's bad to be white.
Yeah.
What's critical race theory all about? Well, it's the same damn thing they did to the Moors. Pardon my French.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's the same playbook.
It's Marxism, and it's just, they use everything. They're throwing the book at us right now.
Right. So my point is that we were given a slave narrative about humanity. We are enslaved. We are already enslaved. So now we have to break free from that. And that's the time that we're living in now. We're not slaves. We're the creator in human form. We're all connected. Every single last one of us is a fractal of source. And we are powerful together. They control us when they divide us. They control us when they make us afraid. They control us when they force us to put things in our body that we don't know what they're putting in there. When they make us afraid that if we don't do this, we're going to harm somebody. When in fact, we're harming ourselves.
Exactly. They're using the guilt to
Yeah.
enforce this whole idea, this agenda.
So I understand, understand that's a polarizing topic, but it's an agenda, and it's been sped up. It was supposed to be done behind closed doors in the dark. We were supposed to not know what hit us. And we had the last 4 years to start waking up to their agenda, and they're not hidden anymore. If you have eyes to see, you can see what they're doing.
Hi, Michelle. We had a question from Linda. I'm going to go ahead and read her question for you, if that's okay.
Sure. Mhm.
All right. She says, I appreciate your well-researched information gathered for us here tonight. So good. With your mention of Spain here on that tower, this question was a little bit ago, and their signature control in Kansas City, Missouri, all you share about Germany, the British crown, royalty elsewhere. Do you have any thoughts about the Magna movement going on at La Palma volcano off the coast of Spain on the Canary Islands? He says, much concern I'm seeing about the impact to the Atlantic tsunami upon the East Coast if La Palma blows. And she also, as an addendum on this, says, why are so many government offices moved out of DC right now? Okay, thank you.
Because DC's the swamp. And it's a foreign entity.
Mhm.
It's not part of any state. It's like City of London, it's like Vatican City and United Nations. I think they're going to move the seat of government. I think big things are about to happen. I have heard something about the La Palma situation. I would expect things in a couple of months, things are going to get kind of rough. There's talk about the Three Gorges Dam in China. And all I can say is what I've been following is that there have been good elements that have been planning this since Kennedy's assassination. And there's a plan to take down the deep state. And they say it had to be this way. It's not going to be clean. We're seeing that already. My heart tightens up. I hate to see innocent people hurt. But it's either that what we're seeing right now, and it's not fast enough, or it's 90% of us. And that was what the Georgia Guidestones say, 500 million in perpetual balance. Keep the population at 500 million. How many people are on the earth right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's like over 8, I think, or right at it. Something like that.
It's in our faces. It's real. We don't want to believe it. We don't like to believe it. We want our comfortable, the lives that we think are comfortable to keep going on. But there's this little thing we have to deal with, big thing we have to deal with. And it's what's been going on without our knowledge or consent. So I'm hoping if the sources of information I follow are correct, that the Galactic Federation is involved. There's a massive battle going on, the non-physical right now. And that they're going to try to keep whatever happens here on Earth to a minimum. And several years ago, I mean, I was afraid of a cataclysm and all this kind of stuff. And I've got a little camper thing in my car. I had friends build out this place where I could sleep and store food. So I've got a little prep mobile because I was like going to be ready one way or the other. Because I'm not going to, things go south, I'm going to the desert, and I'm not going to go to a re-education camp. I'm not going to be jabbed. They're not going to have my soul. I'm going to, I would do that before I would allow myself to become a scientific experiment or whatever.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to get dystopian. I really
No, I don't. But that was the plan.
Mhm.
That was the direction we were heading in. But I think like I said, I think the next couple of months are going to, make sure you have enough food for a couple of weeks, cash on hand, the internet goes down or whatever, but the thing is not to go into fear about it. I think there's, at the same time this is going on, so there's the cabal's great reset, and then there's the RV,
Mhm.
and there's a new quantum financial system. And Simon's talked about that already. It's already online. It's activated. We're waiting for the quantum financial system. What happens when that becomes public knowledge, and Nasara and Gasara and abundance, and so that's happening at the same time.
Mhm.
So to your question, Mina, I see this was a very positive civilization. It's possible that the Moors had slaves. I don't see that, but it's possible. I see this as a very higher awareness, higher consciousness civilization, based on what I'm seeing. And again, we've all been so lied to that there's big chunks of information that's missing. So we can just really only piece it together to the best of what's out there. Because if it's in written form, I can guarantee you it's, you can write about anything. You can tell the story that you want to tell. I think there was this ancient advanced civilization that was highly evolved and highly together, and that we've been given a slave narrative about humanity. They want us to think of ourselves as the beasts. A human baby has less rights than, whatever Planned Parenthood is about, and organ harvesting, and that's going on too. I'm just saying how low we are on their totem pole. We're beneath contempt to these controllers. So they want us as slaves. They had to take out the highest level consciousness to get to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. And Lisa
And
has
that's
a
what they did.
question. Lisa, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
It's not of a question, but more of on the back end of what Michelle's talking about with slavery. So they've dummied things down for us, and they've made us so focused on rush. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to work a 9 to 5 job, or I have to work a 12-hour job. They want to keep us busy, to not allow us to think about things that we need to do for ourselves and for our families. They double things down for us. Now, the narrative is that yes, things are in place and we're going to see things happen. However, that covers things at a higher level. And from a lower level, when I say lower level, I mean representatives within your own city, within your own state. Those things that we have to pay attention to as well. And we need to step up as a society and make sure those are called out as well. And we can do that with love and light and support from one another to make sure that these bad, corrupt individuals are brought to justice.
That's why we're a part of the plan.
Absolutely.
We're a part of the plan. And I'm doing my part by doing the research. I don't see myself running for city office or anything like that. Don't have any children, so I'm not going to be on the school board anytime soon, I don't think. But that's what they've done. They've gotten, people that are socialists and communists throughout our government, throughout our schools. And it's just a mess. But we have a chance. We have a chance. We have a chance I didn't think we had 4 years ago. And nobody that I know deserves the fate that was planned for us. Nobody. And I don't know if any of you have heard of Durham, a special prosecutor, but he indicted one of the DNC lawyers.
Yes.
So that's a big deal. And if the military had stepped in, we would not see the bad generals come out. And that would have not worked if you have them on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If you still have dark generals at high levels and you have a military government, that's not going to work. So you have to flush out the dark generals, and everybody has to see it. And again, you don't want to see 13 service members die unnecessarily. But then when you see the current administration's response to that, it's sending you a message. Same thing with the border. You know, there's just, people have to see it or they're not going to change. And those of us that have been awake, I've been awake since 2012, wide awake since 2012. And I'm like, yesterday. I'm ready for that perp walk. I've been ready for the perp walk. And they've done very, very, very bad things.
Yeah, they have. They've been doing a lot of dark acts. I mean, so we can look at it like this too. I don't know if you're familiar with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. I refer back to this because of the implications that we saw with the Mayans and the Incans and the human sacrifices that have been going on for so long. It's like, I believe these people have been doing these dark acts for a very long time. These blood sacrifices, sorry, I'm trying to plug in the power on my computer before it goes off. They've been doing these blood sacrifices and citing these rituals. When you actually speak, you're expelling frequencies. And the thing about our voices is, you know, we're spelling our words, but it's just something to think about in history when you actually look at it under a microscope and you look at all these different areas around the world in civilization where they've had these sacrificial human sacrifices and then animal sacrifices. But there's something about the blood. It's magnetic, and we're also electric. And it's being able to summon dark forces to come in and then act as a host for these things is one of the things that they've been doing with all of this human trafficking and sacrifices and all this other stuff. Because I've been looking at this in the occult area of it. Like, what does it actually mean? Well, magic is basically frequencies. You know, knowing how to manipulate frequencies. That's all it is. And you're considered white or black depending on how you use the frequencies. So a white magician would be someone who just operates under love. And a black magician is someone who's going to be using it against others, you know, to subvert things. And from what I understand, there's karmic repercussions to all of this. But if you're an artificially created mind construct or mind parasite, then, you know, I'm not sure that there's any karma involved. But it gets really, really weird is all I've got to say. I mean, this thing is more like a 100,000,000 D chess game that has so many underlayers and overlayers and dimensional aspects to it that we will never be able to know all of it or understand any of it. But the basic is just to know about the frequencies, how we have this golden capability. I mean, we are like gods because we can emit these frequencies from our mouths. And that in itself is a beautiful thing that not all the animals out here in the world can do. They don't have the power that we have. And that makes us godlike. We're like miniature versions of a larger spectrum.
And we do have a lot of power when we project from the physical to the non-physical. And if anybody's interested in advanced light work meditations, go to 144K armyoflight.org. It's either, I think it's 144K armyoflight.org but you might be able to get to the same place by 144kactivated.org. And there's a big mass meditation on, what's today? It's on Wednesday. And it's directly has to do with the non-physical darkness and transforming that into light, and it's quite an important process. But what I wanted to say in response to what you're saying, Ellen, is what happens here on Earth is pivotal and affects everything. It affects life in the universe. And I know I, for one, want to finish out what's been going on here and move on to a much better world, much better universe, much better place, and learn from this. It happened. We can't change the fact that it happened, but we can make different choices and go into our full potential. And it's a big war. It's a big battle because darkness doesn't want to give it up, but they're going to lose.
Yes, but we have to bring the light. We are the
But
light.
we have to bring the light.
We have to stop arguing. We have to stop fighting. We have to set aside our differences. This is what makes this world so beautiful, is that each of us is just like a snowflake. You know, we have beautiful patterns and beautiful capabilities within each of us. And what side do we feed? Do we feed the darkness or do we feed our light? You know, that's what we're here for.
And
You know,
we're creating, we're creating the new earth.
yes.
You know, whenever we focus on, you know, the positive synchronicities and, you know, the wonderful things around us, you know, the wonderful acts. Sedona has a, you know, community dinner at the Episcopal Church every Monday night at 5 o'clock. And there's always the same group of volunteers there, and they're just happy to give people, well, you know, choose from this box and you get desserts, and choose from this box and you get whole food sandwiches, you know, time expired, but you know, hey, hot meal. They have either a hot meal or a sandwich. But that's the humanity that I resonate with. I'm a volunteer by nature. I was a Kiwanian for a lot of years, and that's my happy place. I like to do those kinds of things. And that's humanity. That's what humanity is all about. Humans, people want to help people.
Yep.
And they have to have this crap scared out of them to start making different choices.
Yeah, it's sad, but you know, a lot of people, even in our group and outside in the world, I mean, we're all at our different levels of this great awakening, but to embrace each other again as one big community on earth, that's the day that I look for, the day of liberation where we don't have these borders anymore. I'm sorry, but everybody wants to be in this country because of what we have, you know?
But it's part of an agenda.
Yes.
They want to invade this country and replace us.
Yep.
Well, and it's not just that. I mean, just think if you're born in an oppressive country and you hear about this great nation, the United States of America, and all the opportunity is there for you, and you can have a better life. I mean, it's a magical place. So why wouldn't the world want to come here? But we need to help them have it in their world. So then
Yep.
it'll be everywhere, not just here.
And the American people are the secret weapon.
Yeah.
You know, we're the you know, consciousness carriers, because we've been seeded with freedom from our birth. You know, always raised to believe we were free. This was the land of the free, you know, people dying for freedom, and all branches of the service. And, you know, I don't think there's any other place in the world that has that consciousness. And this deep state's been doing their thing everywhere. And some places are, you know, further along the continuum than we are. So you look at what's happening in Australia, and, you know, and actually different states here, depending on, you know, how severe the lockdowns are. But, you know, don't tread on me.
Yep.
You know, and when that spirit gets awakened, in the majority of Americans. That's why they wanted to do this deal and get it over with and, have it done before we knew what hit us.
Yeah, well, the only factor to all of this is they tried to take our guns early on and it didn't work. And we're still armed to the teeth. So, our teeth are ready to bite somebody's hands, that's for sure.
I can't find where to raise my hand, so I'm just going to butt in here when there's
Go
a
ahead.
roll.
Go for it.
We talk about mind control and all that, and one event that I don't hear anybody talk about, but I think it is a huge event in America, is back in the mid-60s, they convinced Americans, oh, you need a better house, you need a better car, your wife needs to go to work, we have to become a 2-income family. And they did it under the guise of the feminist movement. And what that did is enslaved all of us, So now 66% of the people in America are 2-family income. And I think the other 33% probably don't have 2 people to have a 2-family income. But that caused inflation in houses, caused inflation in everything, caused us to be more, tied to the man, trying to make ends meet. And it made the distance between middle class and poverty just astronomical because, most of the lower class doesn't have a family structure. So, it's all kind of all put together and rolled together to attack us. And, I don't know if that can ever be turned around. Maybe if Sarah and Jacera and everybody has all the money in the world, yeah, but there'll still be a lot of people that want more, unfortunately, because it's been instilled in them since before any of us were born.
That's a really good point. And I think the companion point to that is what happened to the children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Either raising themselves or kids raising kids.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that play out, boy, big time.
Oh, yeah. Or expecting schools to raise them and give them values,
Whew.
Aren't our values.
Or no sense of history or immature responses or, very selfish responses or what was it? The 2 girls that stole a car, 14-year-olds that stole a car not too long ago and dragged the Uber driver along and killed him within the last couple of months.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's, kids with no sense of.
Yeah, it's arrested development, and we're dealing with people who haven't matured in any aspect. But it's all by design so that the society collapses and the global control takes over.
Right. Morality and conscience are the 2 words that come to mind about what's missing. It's just, but I think the takeaway is it doesn't have to be that way. And we can make a difference. Each one of us can make a difference in our own way, the way that we know how, the way that we do best. So I do mine by blogging and making videos. I'm not a confrontational person. I avoid crowds, except when I go to the grocery store. I'm not going to be the kind of person that's going to get in your face. Other people have that gift. It's not mine. I have other gifts. So I'm just saying that find your niche, find where you can make a difference. And if nothing else, when we start to see these changes publicly, being there to help your family, your friends through what's coming, because you're awake, because things aren't what we've been told. And I'm not just even talking about my work, I'm talking about what's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's a lot to think about, but really the answer is just love. It's love and passion. What's your passion? Find your passion and live your best life and help others in the process.
And what world do you want to live in? And the extent to which you can make that happen. And I can tell you, I mean, on the world scale, this year has been horrible. on a personal level, for me, this year's been amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I have to tell you, I mean, this whole week, I heard about this Mercury retrograde, or one of the planets in retrograde. This whole week, I can't even express like how these archons or something is attacking me. I got rear-ended last Saturday, which I'm now seeing a lawyer and a chiropractor and all these other things. My lawnmower broke. My truck yesterday broke on the highway. You know, I'm just going, okay, I'm gonna make lemons out of this. So I was dressed as a pirate when my truck broke down. I was going to Pirate Palooza in Decatur, and I just made the day of it. I'm like, well, we're abandoning the ship and we're gonna just set sail to Decatur and be a part of this festival. And you would not believe the synchronicity that got us back home. I mean, it was just like, it was just amazing. I was like, this is what life is about. You just gotta create your world, you know? It was so fun. It was so amazing. Do we have any more questions for Michelle? The rain is coming down right now, so it's hitting my metal roof. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's kind of making a noise. But yeah, so it's 8:19. Does anybody have any questions? We have 41 people here. Anybody raising your hands?
And Georgia is a great state. Great people.
Yeah, there's something
Yes.
said about the South. You know, we still have that Southern hospitality. Oh, we got a question for you. Mickey, what's your question?
Hey, first off, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you all for putting this together. It's my first Connecting Consciousness meeting that I've managed to attend, and I have absolutely learned so much. I mean, I thought that I knew a lot. I mean, I'm aware of a lot, but just wow. This has been great. I'm going to be doing this more often. And so my question is, it's actually, and I posed this in a private message, but Michelle, you mentioned in passing earlier something about a lot of naturopaths being killed and stuff. Can you send me any information on that? Because I don't know if you saw my chat, but this is something that affects me very personally.
I didn't see it in the chat, but I think
that it just was like, whoa, because I just got this news today. Anyway, go ahead.
No, between 2014 and 2016, my friends and I, my travel friends, I call them, there were 4 of us, would meet each other's house and watch things like the Secret Space Program and, you know, things on Gaia.com and David Wilcock and probably Simon, other people. And so we were getting our alternative education. And that was when things like the murder of Antonin Scalia took place, that they wanted us to think was suicide or something, pillow over his head. So that was one of the things I remember from that time. But the other thing was, there was like, I don't know how many naturopaths it was, but it was a lot that were ending up dead. I want to say it was like 100. Like every week or so, there would be a naturopath that would die. And this has been going on for a long time. They've been killing people and say, "Oh, it was a suicide."
Yeah,
somebody's found with a red scarf around their neck on a knob, like a suicide.
Right. Yeah.
That was how Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade were found recently.
And they're still voting Democrat.
Well, they're still cheating. I don't think they're voting Democrat. I think they've perfected the art of the steal.
No, I'm talking about the people that have committed suicide are voting Democrat.
Oh yeah, right. Good
Oh
point.
my goodness.
Good point. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Over my head.
Okay.
So I don't think it's the numbers that it was during that period of time. And again, I want to say it was like 2014, 2015, 2016. But there was a statistically significant number of people that were dying that were naturopaths. And you could probably look it up on the internet. You know, like,
Yeah, it freaked me out when he said that because a very good friend of mine was killed the other day, and she was a naturopath, and I mean, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't, it's like here I am in this Zoom meeting today, and you said that, and it was really not. I don't know a whole lot about what happened yet, but again, I just don't believe in coincidences. So I believe there's some sort of reason why I was here tonight and why I heard that, and I don't know. But thank you again.
and I hope
Right.
something positive comes from it.
Yeah.
The naturopathic medicine is a threat to big pharma.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially with what's going on. And I was just having a conversation earlier with a very wise elder friend of mine, and she was mentioning how anyone in any kind of doctor or anyone in the medical field, should they dare to speak out against the narrative, they're putting their livelihoods and possibly even their lives on the line. So pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you live in Georgia?
I live in Arizona, but
Oh, okay.
my dad's from Georgia, and I have a lot of relatives there.
Yeah, I came in
So I've
about
been there many
15 minutes
times.
late. Yeah, I'm in Marietta.
Yeah,
I
most of
miss
my dad's
Arizona.
family's in Stone Mountain area.
Okay, yeah, beautiful area up there.
Michelle,
No, June.
What's
I think June
everybody's
was
watching
saying,
Arizona. So, Michelle, everybody's watching Arizona, and then Georgia, we hope is next.
yeah, I hope so too. I mean, they've got the information. Everybody knows it was a steal. Everybody knows officials are corrupt
Yep.
and covered it up.
They say everybody, but amazingly, there are some people that just seem like they don't. We'll see what happens though. Like you were saying, over the next month or two, it's starting to look like things are popping off. So should be an interesting next few weeks.
That's what I'm saying. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be potentially rough, but make sure you have your food. I've got some non-perishables, easy to fix stuff. Make sure I get some water every time I go out. Couple of weeks they're saying I've been stocked and prepared for years. So
Yeah.
I'd like to use some of the food I put away.
No, listen, I've got enough. You guys, if y'all need some food, I can ship some to you. I've got beans and rice for years.
And gas up. That's right. But I think when we come to the other side, I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. And when we get to the other side, I think things are going to start to get better.
I would like to challenge everyone to become very critical thinkers and encourage everybody around them and their friends and everything to become critical thinkers, and don't buy everything you hear on Sunday from the pastors. Okay?
On that, I'm in a real unusual situation. The first time I heard about the United Nations 2030 resolution was over 3 years ago in a sermon at my Baptist church. And for Danny to get up there and talk about that, I was just blown away. I knew about it, but I never expected a sermon on it. He's something else.
Time to be brave, and it's time to be strong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're gunning for Christians big time.
I would challenge everyone that's got a Bible to go to Matthew chapter 12, verses 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42. And Jesus, in his own words, tells us that he's going to be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Now, you don't get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday till Sunday. For all this time, we've been told about Easter, and our pastors have pushed it the wrong way. So you tell me how you get 3 nights and 3 days from Friday to Saturday.
Why are you bringing that?
I just want to start.
Did you say Matthew 12, 38 through 42?
I said Matthew 12, verse 38 through 42.
Thank you.
And I think one of the problems we're having right now, this waking up, is because of the religious factor we have going on. I'm not sure it's a real strong relationship with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, but it's a mindset they got. So everybody needs to be able to talk to people and tell them the truth about everything. And the scriptures are all correct. The scriptures are facing science and not disagreeing with science. We just interpret them incorrectly. Okay? We just need to learn how to interpret our scriptures the way God wants us to.
I ain't gonna agree with you on that.
Okay. So just pray in the Holy Spirit to lead, guide you, and direct you in that area. Okay?
Yeah, I believe what we're about to witness is the remerging of science and spirituality as one instead of it being divided. That's one way that it incited their control globally, is by compartmentalizing everything and breaking it all down into fractions, when really everything is one.
Mhm.
So
They shifted our perception and understanding of all of that. So we don't understand it anymore.
Nor do we take the time, research, and everything to get to read the scriptures and ask the Holy Spirit to lead, guide, and direct us in what they say. We just go to Sunday, listen to the guy, and hey, he's preaching the Bible. He can do us no wrong. He'll tell us nothing different.
yeah, you really have to just discern the truth within yourself. Use your inner guidance, which is the God force. God is in each of us, and we have to follow that compass. It's always shining and it's always there, but you just have to know this. Wherever you feel guided to go and to speak to anyone, to do anything, follow it. It's called your intuition, but this is the guidance of God inside of you. And use it, because it's the way I've learned to live my life. And it's so beautiful when we let go of fear. And yesterday was a prime example for someone, a friend of mine, who joined in all this whole huge adventure that we had yesterday. It's just let go of fear and just know that you're going to be okay no matter what. We're all just immortals, having immortal experience. So, why are they selling fear? Because we don't believe that we're immortal. We don't believe that we just continue on this journey. But it's beautiful, and that's why I'm having the best time out here. And I don't have a job. I'm just like, woo, let's just go live life. I don't want to work a 9 to 5 anymore. I'm like, well, we're just going to make it happen somehow. I'm freewheeling, just like those people. What were they called? They were in your video, the
Freedomites.
Freedomites. Yes, that's me. Like, let me just go out here. I mean, they sound like hippies. I think I'm descended from them. So
We can do this.
I know.
Don't lose hope. No matter how it looks, don't lose hope.
Yeah.
of clarification, Anthony Scalia, they said had a heart attack and they buried him, his wife was never involved, no autopsy or anything in about a 24-hour period of time in Texas at a big ranch.
Mhm. Yep. I remember that vividly because that happened when I was visiting, with my friends, and we're like, are you kidding? It just, yeah. Oh, and they found him with a pillow over his face. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The usual story, usually it's like a bullet to the back of the head. Oh, it's suicide.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And they've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah. Does anybody else have questions before we sign off tonight? Anybody raise your little hands or add a question to the chat if you can't raise your hand. Because this has been very enlightening. And that's why I knew I had to have you here, Michelle, because I want this information to get more widespread and I wanted to assist in that. So.
And there are some, excellent researchers on YouTube, and we all have a lot of things in common in the sense that I never had any experience in this up until 2018. I learned how to make videos so I could start getting it out after I started blogging. And a lot of people, I'm hearing that from a lot of people. And it's inspiring people to do their own stuff like this for the first time. So it's grassroots.
Yes.
It's totally grassroots because, you've got the big names, Simon, other people that have been, leading for a long time. And it's like, it's coming up from everywhere now, and they can't stop it. If they stop one person, there's somebody else.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like I see it rolling just like a big, huge snowball down a hill, in the cartoons where it just keeps getting bigger because it's picking up more snow. It's picking up steam now, this whole truth movement and, just everything. On YouTube, I don't even see that much stuff getting deleted anymore because it's coming out and they can't stop it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm just going to bring this up, and I know I probably have to wind this down here in just a second, but there's a great picture on Twitter yesterday and today, and it's the 6 obviously federal guys with their muscles and their issue sunglasses at the rally yesterday. That was the setup, the January 6th rally. That was the setup for the Patriots. And they've got this photograph of these like 6 good-looking guys with muscles, and one meme said Abercrombie and Snitch. And they're calling them Bedbois or something like that, but it's like the only ones that showed up to this because they knew it was a setup were the cops and all of their riot gear and the feds, and the only one they were arrested was an undercover federal agent. Nobody went because they knew. Anyway, it was cute.
That's awesome. I haven't been keeping up with the all the latest news, but yeah, I mean, for me, I'm like, this is great. The whole show is like, get your popcorn out,
Yep. That's good advice. When you're roughing it at home over the next couple of weeks, when things go down, just get your popcorn.
Yeah, I can't wait till that audit. When is it? Is it next
Don't be afraid. Well, they gave us a date and a time, and one thing I've heard is that could be disinformation to pull out the bad guys. Because when we know they know, and they have a tendency to do things to distract. So it's possible that they put out a date and a time to do that so that they could draw out the bad guys. But I'm ready for it to come out, and I'm ready to see the Georgia audit. And I'm ready to see the Pennsylvania audit. I'm ready to see the Wisconsin audit.
Yeah, that'll be the next phase of awakening. And then it'll just shake the world awake even more. And they'll be like, what? Watch. I mean, it's just stage 2. Here we go. It has to be done slowly, though, for the rest of these people that are really deep in the trance. And that's fine. I've been fine with it. I'm just sort of rolling along, just waiting very patiently. It's coming. Yeah, they're saying that it's going to be the 27th or 28th over in the chat. Friday at 1 p.m. supposedly. So we'll see.
We'll see. All I know is going to happen.
Yeah,
Is the timing is in God's hands and the people that are working behind the scenes to help us out.
exactly. Do we have any more questions for Michelle before we sign off for the evening? There we go. Michelle Fielding and Amy compared notes from their guides last night, and they say 2 months, then things are more generally known in January.
Yeah, I would say between now and the end of the year ish. I would have preferred the beginning of the year, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so. All right, is that it for questions, everybody? I think that might be it. Well, if there's no more questions, I want to thank you profusely, Michelle, for being our guest tonight, because this is another part of our history that we truly need to know. You know, that, like, I love going out here now that I've been watching your videos and other people's videos, looking at the old towns that we have in Georgia, and you can see the evidence of the mud flood everywhere. When the windows are down at the ground level, they're just buried in the dirt. And that's just one of the things that I want to point out, is you can go and look at this in all of your towns.
And ask yourself about underground Atlanta. That's another one to question.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's everywhere. It's all under our feet. You know, that's why they've been able to use all these tunnels everywhere, you know, for human trafficking and other things. It's everywhere. It's global.
My YouTube, if you type in Michelle Gibson and then type Moors after that, Moors, it comes right up. There's a number of Michelle Gibsons, and I started my channel long before I became a creator of videos. And then my website is piercingtheveilofillusion.com.
Yes, I had posted that earlier, but we can go ahead and I'll put that up again. That way people can go to your site. Yep, let me put .com in there. Yeah, because if you guys need to get in touch with Michelle, her website is now posted in the chat. piercingtheveilofillusion.com, and do go and sign up for her channel, you know, and start looking at all the evidence that she's been working on. I mean, it's amazing how many hours that you put into all of this.
Been doing it for over 3 years, at least once a week. So it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, but it's good. Like, I've been getting your updates in my email. That's another thing you guys can do, is sign up for the email updates, and your short and sweet versions are very informative. So I'm keeping up.
and that's the suggestions are coming from viewers. And my mind is being blown. But I've already done a lot of research, and so I can start kind of piecing things together, but it's really helping me see the even bigger picture. And that's coming from you all. You know, somebody said, look into Lake Lanier.
Mm.
So I looked into Lake Lanier, and whoo,
Yeah.
and Sawney Mountain. And then I found out about the Georgia Gold Rush. How many of you know about the Georgia Gold Belt and the Georgia Gold Rush?
Yeah, no, I don't know about that one. No, it's
I didn't know about that either. It was the second gold rush after the North Carolina Gold Rush. North Carolina Gold Rush was in 1799, and the Georgia Gold Rush was in 1823, 24. And then they dug out that whole area, and then they went to San Francisco. This is what we're told. So if you go to Sawney Mountain, there's all kinds of gold mines up there.
That's right. We do have Dahlonega. That's the only one that I know about. You know.
Yep. You can still get a lot of gold up there in this area. I'm near Dahlonega, so yeah.
Yeah. And so that
Lake
strip
Lanier.
goes from Alabama on up to Charlotte. So it kind of goes at a diagonal. How many of you remember the Palm Sunday tornado outbreak? Anybody? This would have been in 1993. Palm Sunday tornado outbreak. And I want to say it was in Piedmont, Alabama. There were 3 churches that were hit during Palm Sunday service. And the track of these tornadoes went up the same gold belt, which I thought was really interesting,
Yeah, that,
between Alabama and North Carolina. So if you look up Palm Sunday tornado outbreak, I think it was 1993. But the gold belt, if you look at a map, is from northeastern Alabama up to southwestern North Carolina, and it goes right up through Georgia.
okay, yeah, I'm gonna look into that. That's another thing that I'm just gonna be looking at out of curiosity, because, I don't know, are you familiar with Mud Fossil University? At
I'm
Roger?
aware of it, and I do believe there's a lot of mud fossils in our world. I just don't believe that everything is explainable by mud fossils. So, but I do believe that they exist. I believe there's giant humans that are petrified. I have no doubt even if you look at a geode, with crystals in the middle, it looks like a brain. The geode looks like a brain, and we have crystals inside of us. So it makes sense that geodes could be little, brains of some kind that are old. And whether or not they're mud fossils or they're just old, I don't know. But geodes look like brains. I worked in a crystal shop for a couple of years after I moved here. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, and
What does that remind me of?
so we had Dan Willis talked about Marcel Vogel with us a couple of months ago, and Marcel Vogel was the pioneer scientist for IBM for 27 years, and he discovered all this he studied crystals and crystal technology and how to use them in technology that we use today. But he goes into detail about also the crystalline structure of our body and how our bones are actually made of crystal, and the cellular structure is encased in liquid crystal. So if we're walking around as crystalline beings, what are we doing? The implications of what we do to ourselves on a daily basis is huge. It just hit me today, because one of the things that he said about smoke affecting crystals, he said that anytime there was smoke anywhere near the crystals would not hold a memory or a charge. And I was like, oh, what are the implications for people who actually smoke cigarettes and stuff? Or when we're by a campfire, or, what does that do to our frequency? And we know that sage is used to clear out spirits and things in a house. Well, surely it would, because if you're crystalline and smoke affects the crystal, then it stops some sort of energetic transfer that we aren't aware of. And I was just pondering that today about people who actually smoke. I'm like, wow, just think about what that does to their entire crystalline structure, which is their body. I don't know. It really just hit me, because I've never really thought about it in that way. But,
and again, that's all part of their deliberate actions. They started brewing beer and distilling hard liquor as soon as they could. And then you've got the cigarettes coming in around that same time, and you've got fluoride and all the things that calcify our pineal glands in our water, and,
it's everything.
fried foods and junk food. And
I mentioned about the rubber soles that we wear on our shoes. It's a buffer. What does rubber do? It buffers electricity. You don't have an electrical current going through. So, yeah, I think about all these things. But I just want to share that, I want to spread this awareness to others so that people can really start to get some of this idea of what's really going on. It's amazing. But yeah, do we have any questions for Michelle? Anything? Is everybody pretty much done for the evening, I guess. It's 8:48. Yeah,
Yeah,
we usually go
that's
about 2 hours, with all of our guests.
later for you than me. It's
Yeah,
almost 6 here.
yeah, it's okay. We don't want to keep you too long. I know you probably got things to do. More research.
Keeps
So-
me busy.
It's good though. I am grateful for you and all these other people who are truly trying for the better in knowledge and just striving for more for humanity to dig up this truth. It's huge, but we're all a part of it. Each one of us. I've said this before, each of us is a piece of the whole. So we contribute in whatever way that we can. And that's why I wanted you here tonight. And I'm so grateful for you to be here. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Yeah, so I guess if nobody has any more questions, then we're just going to go ahead and close this meeting tonight. But we just want to thank Michelle greatly for her contribution to being our guest tonight and spending time with us to share with us all of this information that she's come across. I know that this is going to be a part of our knowing in the future, when they really start telling us more about the truth and the true history that was lost. It's very important. So thank you so much, Michelle. And we're going to go ahead and say goodnight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody, you can unmute your
Thank you,
microphones and say goodnight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.